the sea turtle.
White sails and blue water. For centuries, the Caribbean Sea has been the high road to romance, the sailorman's windward road to adventure. Here, where the tropical breeze blows fresh and clean, many a venturing sail has run before the trades. But for our story, the road to adventure lies beneath these waters. Here, 6 fathoms deep, where strange creatures exist and survive in a curious world apart. One of these is the leopard shark, a submarine hunter of singular size and grace. There are none so adapted to this water world as the various members of the shark family, and perhaps the deadliest of all is the tiger shark. Here, too, is found that most bizarre of underwater creatures, the stingray, whose name comes from the weapon in its tail. Its giant cousin, the manta ray, glides through the water like a streamlined sea sled, obviously intended to live and travel forever submerged. But strangest of all these denizens of the deep is one which is at home in the sea and yet is able to leave the depths and walk on dry land. This is the amazing creature called the giant sea turtle, and its saga is one of the most fascinating in nature. Our story began towards the end of a calm summer's day in that quiet hour just before sunset. The setting was a lonely stretch of beach called Turtle Bogue. It lay along the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica. And then there appeared on that shore a solitary creature come from the depths on a compelling mission. With the approach of twilight, the female sea turtle prepared to leave her natural element. She was about to reenact a drama as old as time, the drama of propagation. Like something out of the prehistoric past, she paused in the shallows waiting for darkness. For the protective mantle of night was her only defense against the predators who roamed this beach seeking to destroy her. One of these was the jaguar, known in these parts as El Tigre, and like its namesake, as deadly and lethal a cat as ever prowled the jungle. Curious as any of its kind, El Tigre investigates everything in its path and kills whatever it does not like. Feel the menace. Her only hope at this moment was to lie as still as a rock. Indeed, she almost looked like one. El Tigre may or may not have been momentarily deceived. In the end, what really spared the turtle was the cat's instinctive dislike of water. A somewhat fastidious creature, it hates to get wet. With the coming of the night, the turtle could wait no longer. She had to fulfill her mission, had to perpetuate her kind. And so, laboriously and clumsily, even in the face of danger, she made her slow, lumbering journey across the sands. Having scooped out a nesting place, the turtle started to lay her eggs, a procedure that would require most of the night, for she produced them not in mere dozens, but by the score, often 100 or more. This was nature's way of playing the odds in the game of survival. She was done. Now she had to cover the nest and disguise its location as best she could. For after she left this spot, the eggs would rest unattended here for 60 days. During that time, the warm sands would be their incubator. With the dawn, every moment she lingered was fraught with peril. The jaguar closed fast. Now to settle the issue that had remained undecided before. But this seemed to be a tougher nut to crack than El Tigre first thought. There appeared to be few places to take hold of the problem, especially when the problem insisted on moving. Shell was protection of a sort, a kind of armor plate against fang and claw. But unlike her land relative, the tortoise, she could not withdraw inside it. Her head and flippers were vulnerable, and if the jaguar should ever figure this out, she would be in trouble. Safe at last, the turtle returned to her proper world, protected once more by the element that was both home and haven. 2 months later, Turtle Bogue swarmed with newly born baby turtles. Scores and scores of hatchlings struggled to the rim of their sandy nest and began a frenzied race for the sea. In their erratic way of going, their actions appeared almost toy-like, as though each tiny turtle were motivated by a hidden wind-up spring. But with all that, there was nothing tiny or toy-like about their determination. And it was this that carried many safely to the sea. For others, however, the trek of the toys became more serious. For a multitude of predators always seemed to know when the turtle migration was underway. The first to appear was the coatimundi, omnivorous cousin of the raccoon. Deadly though he might be, he and his kind generally were satisfied with one catch at a time. It was the greedy seagulls who took the greater toll. But more destructive than any of nature's predators was man himself. This man, fortunately, was not a predator. He was a protector, Dr. Archie Carr, research professor of zoology at the University of Florida. Perhaps the world's foremost authority on turtles. With the generous support of the Caribbean Conservation Corporation and the Costa Rican government, Dr. Carr had set up Operation Green Turtle, a program designed to save the species from annihilation. The gathering of these hatchlings was the first step in that conservation campaign. For some time, Dr. Carr had been awaiting the arrival of a fellow zoologist. And when a trim-looking schooner hove to offshore, he knew that an exciting experiment would shortly begin. One which would tell them much about the habits of the green turtle. The skipper of the Lorraine was Captain Holgate. The first mate was Kinky the kinkajou, a clever hunter. His real job was rodent control. Major Tobago, the second mate, was helmsman and critic at large. And Alvin, able seaman, actually ran the ship. The zoologist was Dr. Hamilton, longtime colleague and acquaintance of Dr. Carr. And accompanying him was his nephew, a bright young lad named Mark, whose curiosity was insatiable. The boy was himself a naturalist of sorts, even though a beginner, and he already knew a great deal about turtles from long discussions with his uncle. But now he looked forward to a special briefing on the subject by Dr. Carr, the world authority. With this meeting came Mark's official acceptance into the Brotherhood of the Green Turtle.
This green turtle that we're all interested in is just about wiped out of most of the Caribbean, and this 22 miles of Costa Rican shore is one of the only places left in the whole western half. It's the only place left in the western half of the Caribbean where we can still find them in enough numbers to do the tagging and study the life history in the way we want to do it. First thing most people who come here want to know is why we came here to start with. And the answer to that is this is the only place that I could find after a couple of years of chasing around the Caribbean where you could actually get any contact with, with green turtles. You can't just go out in a boat and study them from over the gunwale, as it were. You've got to have some way where you can get close to them and do things to them, especially where you can put tags on them. Because by tagging an animal, then you got some check on where it went during the time between your tagging time and its recovery time later on. And this is actually the central part of this program here. It's the main thing we're up to here. This is a tagging project, primarily. The tag we use is made out of Monel metal. We clamp it to the front flipper. It doesn't hurt the turtle, and it stays on for at least 9 years. We've had some of them come back 9 years later. So one thing we're doing is simply trying to fill gaps in the natural history of the sea turtle. And the other is to save the green turtle from what looks like extinction. Apparently the thing is on the skids. It's on the way out. It's too good to eat. The soup that they make from it is too good, and it's too important a source of protein for people who live by the ocean for them to let it alone. And now that people are getting so abundant, this is a tough problem. The Operation Green Turtle that you no doubt have heard about is one of these projects. In it, we take baby turtles that have hatched in our hatchery from eggs that we've picked up along the beach and reburied in a safe place where they're kept away from predators. When these hatch out, we put them aboard a Navy airplane that has been sent down every year now and carry them to different places around the Caribbean, install them there, let them hatch there, or let them emerge into the water there, depending on whether it's eggs or hatchlings that we deliver, and then pray that they will come back to this place when they grow up. Of all the scientific undertakings we've done, the one that's interesting us the most is the work with the navigation of the animal. Its ability to strike out across the open Caribbean, for instance, and home in here on Turtle Bogue and come ashore in the same eighth of a mile that it nested on, say, 5 or 6 or 8 years before. This apparently means that it's able to guide itself by some information, cues, and senses that we don't really understand. And this ability of animals to guide themselves in the open sea when there are no landmarks remains as one of the great mysteries of animal behavior, and a thing that we're trying to learn to understand.
It was this great mystery that had brought Mark and his uncle to Turtle Bogue. Dr. Hamilton proposed to catch a turtle in this vicinity, carry it a distance of 1,500 miles, release it in strange waters, and see if its homing instinct would bring it back to this beach. But though Dr. Carr's tagging procedures had shown that turtles do return to their native haunts, never had a turtle been known to navigate so great a distance as that. Next morning, the schooner Lorraine took a quick turn along the coast. The skipper and all hands were on the lookout for turtle boats, and more specifically for turtles. For his experiment, Dr. Hamilton needed a very special turtle, the largest, strongest specimen to be had in these waters. When a local fisherman turned up with a true giant among turtles, the good doctor knew he was in luck. Of course, the transaction required certain formalities, a custom of the locale. Barter for the pleasure of barter was part of it, the needs of science notwithstanding. Besides, what fisherman ever gave away a prize catch for nothing? Once the bargain was concluded, the Lorraine and its crew made ready to take aboard a very valuable cargo. With the second mate giving the orders, all hands laid to with a will. The first mate had been in the sack below deck, but an event of this kind was too unusual to let it pass without notice. Indeed, when had they ever taken aboard a cargo like this? The turtle was so big and so old-looking that it was decided then and there to nickname him Solomon. Any turtle that had survived this long had to be both wily and wise. So, Solomon he became. With a name like that, he would seem to deserve only the best of accommodations. Strangely, he ended up on his back, looking most undignified. There was a good reason for this. Placed right side up, he would suffocate from the pressure and weight of his own shell. And so he was made as comfortable as possible for the long journey that now lay ahead. For the purposes of Dr. Hamilton's experiment, it became necessary that Solomon have an identifying brand of some kind, sort of a turtle social security number, as it were. The boy, Mark, was given this chore and decided to have some fun with it. Well, certainly Solomon would never be taken for any other turtle. And so it came about that an ancient sea turtle from Turtle Bogue began a journey for science. Destination, the Virgin Islands, 1,500 miles away.
A turtle named of Solomon, who lived to the age of 201. The reason for this, that turtle was wise. He never get married, have no strings, no ties. For 1,500 miles he travel upside down, and right side up he have to swim back home. One day beneath the sea, the fisherman's net pull him up so quick that he hardly get wet. He's sprawled on his back, all he sees is the sky. Be sure to seize the time to tell the world goodbye. Oh, 1,500 miles he travel upside down, and right side up he have to swim back home. There once was a turtle named of Solomon, who lived to the age of 201. The reason for this, that turtle was wise. He never get married, have no strings, no ties. Of 1,500 miles he travel upside down, and right side up he have to swim back home. Now he go away, far away from his pad. He journey so far it make him very mad to have to come back to the place where he started. He got to swim like crazy, he don't know for what. Oh, 1,500 miles he travel upside down, and right side up he have to swim back home.
In due course, the Lorraine arrived at Dr. Hamilton's headquarters in the Virgin Islands. In preparation for the ordeal ahead, Solomon needed to get his sea legs back, and so he and his newfound friends spent many a playful hour in his special underwater pen. Before Solomon could be sent to sea, it was necessary that he be checked out for certain helpful data. First, his weight. Now, this took a little doing. $450 plus 30. 480 pounds. Nearly a quarter of a ton. But this was good, for the test that lay ahead required a big, strong turtle. The next problem was to try to determine Solomon's cruising speed. By triangulation, it was calculated that his daily progress would be a remarkable 30 nautical miles. If Solomon could keep up this pace for 1,500 miles, the return journey would take him 50 days. Truly a grueling test of his endurance. Now came the key to the whole operation, the tracking buoy. First, to paint it a bright color for visibility so that it might show up on the surface of the sea. Then to insert the compact transmitter that would send out a constant flow of radio signals. Sealed into its watertight compartment, it would in effect become a miniature broadcasting station. Solomon was not to be merely tagged and turned loose to finish the journey on his own. It was Dr. Hamilton's intention to follow him and, as it were, to make the return journey with him. Thus, there had been installed on board the Lorraine a radio direction finder that would pick up Solomon's signal from as far away as 12 miles.
Transmitter is now operational. Are you receiving?
And so preparations were complete. All was in readiness now for the great journey that lay ahead. At last, the big day arrived. The tracking gear was ready, the turtle was ready. All that remained was to fasten the one to the other with a length of good, stout line. And so it was that Solomon had his personal radio station fastened to his rear bumper. The launching was without frill. Solomon simply went over the side, and his private frequency went with him. As simple as that. When Solomon lit out for home, the transmitter had to follow, beeping along behind. And now it was up to the schooner to make sail in a hurry, for the impatient Solomon took off as though he had a dinner engagement 1,500 miles away. If the Lorraine was to track him, it was the Lorraine's lookout to keep up. Time, tide, and turtles wait for no man.
Well, Skipper, there's 4 possible routes that the turtle can take from the Virgin Islands. North of the Greater Antilles through the Straits of Florida, down through the Yucatan Channel, past the Mosquito Keys to Tortuguero or Turtle Bowl. The second route would be from the Virgin Islands again, north of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, north of Jamaica, down past the Mosquito Keys, and back to this same beach. The third route would be back along the Windward Islands, north of Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, and again to Turtle Bowl. Now these 3 routes, though the longest, would be the easiest on the turtle, inasmuch as it would be swimming past land, going through shallows where it could find turtle grass and could feed all the way. But then there's a 4th route, and this is the one that we don't know about. It's the direct route, right straight across the Turtle Bowl. It's going to be going across open sea, deep water, no landmarks to navigate by, and nothing to feed on, a real test of its endurance. That's the route I think it's going to take, but we just don't know.
If Dr. Hamilton didn't know the exact course, Solomon himself seemed to have no doubt whatever. And straight as a torpedo, he set out across open ocean, his personal buoy bobbing along in his wake. Dr. Hamilton spent every waking hour at his direction finder. Let others do the sailing. His job was to keep the contact. Things things seemed almost to be going too well. There is a well-known law in matters scientific that if something can go wrong, it will. And presently static began to drown out Solomon's signal. So this was serious. For that signal was the lifeline of the whole experiment. Lose it, and Solomon was also lost. Up topside, meanwhile, Major Tobago had found a new sunning place. Little did anyone know that their pet fowl was fouling the reception. That's good. By good navigation and sharp sailing, Captain Holgate had managed to keep track of Solomon every nautical mile of the way. What struck him as most amazing about the turtle's performance was that now, 3 weeks out of St. Thomas, the course still lay straight as an arrow, pointed directly at Turtle Bow. 2 p.m., the 23rd day out. There was a sudden change in Solomon's course towards the northwest. This was puzzling. If he were to continue on this bearing, he would miss Turtle Bow entirely. And now, to make matters worse, the weather was suddenly turning bad. The seabirds sensed the storms coming and were quick to flee its path. But the schooner was forced to accept the sea's battering blow. Solomon's signal was getting fainter and fainter, and this meant the schooner was falling farther and farther behind. Then it was gone entirely. Nothing but silence. Solomon the sea turtle was out there somewhere, but now with contact broken, who could say where? Within 24 hours, the storm had passed. The day turned bright and clear, the sea became calm. But there was no Solomon in sight. No clue as to his whereabouts. Radio contact had been definitely lost. The only thing to do now was to conduct a visual search. Every man aboard was on lookout duty, even Dr. Hamill. The only hope left was to sight the brightly painted buoy, and even then, the odds were all against that kind of luck. Meanwhile, just over the horizon, Solomon was having problems of his own. A tiger shark, ancient enemy of all sea turtles, had begun to stalk him. Solomon's only defense was to try evasive action in shallow waters. Solomon swam a zigzag course through a forest of coral. But this soon proved a mistake. Now he was caught, trapped and tethered by the line trailing behind. Almost casually, the shark closed in. Meanwhile, the impasse had one unforeseen but fortunate effect. It permitted the Lorraine to catch up, and now Mark's binoculars focused on a familiar object. His luck had held, or had it? Sharks meant disaster to both Solomon and the whole experiment, unless something were done, and done quickly. A lucky hit sent the killer into a blood-crazed frenzy. And so it was that by a strange turn of fate, Solomon was set free. Now the wounded shark was in trouble. It was soon apparent that this predator of the deep had hunted his last. Sailing in close quarters like this, the Lorraine had come as near to the reef as it dared. Now Captain Holgate had to turn away, even though it meant bitter disappointment to his friends. For all practical purposes, Solomon had vanished. Was he dead or alive? They had no way of knowing. Near exhaustion from his encounter with the shark and still a long way from Turtle Bogue, Solomon had tenaciously resumed his homeward trek, keeping to the shallows where the way was easier and safer. But eventually he had to come up for air, and that was his undoing. For now he found himself in the hands of the worst enemies of all, the turtle poachers. In these parts, people who take turtles illegally are called veladores. Veladores means stayers awake. And normally these secret hunters work at night, lying in wait for the females as they come ashore to nest. But these brigands were bolder than most. They chose to steal in broad daylight. Already they had beached a sizable catch, and each victim had been put on his back in the hot sun. Solomon did what he could to forestall his fate. Fortunately, he managed to forestall it just long enough. At that moment, a government inspector arrived on the scene. Poachers were an old problem with him, and he knew that he must move in fast. More important than catching the poachers at this moment was saving the turtles. No telling how long they had lain in the hot sun. But in the matter of salvaging Solomon, this was easier said than done. Once again, Solomon had clung to life when the odds against him had seemed insurmountable. But if there is one quality shared by all sea turtles, it is tenacity. The Lorraine, meanwhile, was on a new tack. There no longer seemed any point in pursuing the old one.
Well, we've really reached a point where we have to decide what to do. Unfortunately, we don't have any alternatives. We'll have to go back to Turtle Bogue. Now, if we're lucky enough to find our turtle, then the experiment will still have proved successful. If not, we can pick up another turtle and go back and start over again.
If there's one thing the scientist hates to do, it's to leave an experiment half finished, especially one he's had his heart set on, as Dr. Hamilton had on Operation Solomon. And so it was back to Turtle Bogue to start over. Turtle ho! There he was, a big one. They were in luck. Except that capturing a turtle in open water posed a bit of a problem. The answer, it seemed, was the harpoon, an old turtle hunter's technique for getting a line fastened to the quarry. This was called pegging. The short-tipped harpoon would bury itself in the shell, doing the turtle no real harm. But it took a certain skill and accuracy to make it work. The big turtle was amazingly powerful, strong enough to pull a boat at a surprising speed. The only thing to do now was to let the great sea creature wear itself out. Dr. Hamilton had his second turtle now. A rather reluctant monster, it seemed, but so be it. The experiment could go on. Reluctant? Well, no wonder. It was old Solomon. He had reason to protest. After all, he'd done all this before. Old Solomon had navigated 1,500 miles of open ocean without a single mark to go by, except the one on his chest. He had proven that the homing instinct of the sea turtle is every bit as strong as that of the wild birds and the fishes of the sea.
There once was a turtle named Solomon who lived to the age of 201. The reason for this, that turtle was wise. He never get married, have no strings, no ties. Oh, 1,500 mile he travel upside down, and right side up he have to swim back home. Now he go away, far away from his pad. He journey so far, he make him very mad. To have to come back to the place where he start, he got to swim like crazy. He don't know for what. Oh, 1,500 mile he travel upside down, and right side up he have to swim back home. Now that he come back, they glad to set him free, 'cause that's the happy place he wants to be. He have enough travel, home is the best, but he flirt with a gal, you know the rest. Oh, 1,500 mile he travel upside down, to where the biggest ball and chain in Turtlestown. A pretty girl spy him, decides she'd try him, he wears the biggest ball and chain in Turtlestown.